Hey, curious minds. Beneath myth and mystery lie tales of two lost civilizations, Atlantis and Mu. Were they real or just ancient legends? Okay, let's unpack this. You're joining us for a deep dive into the stories of Atlantis and Mu. We've gathered our sources to sift through the historical mentions, the philosophical concepts, and, well, those persistent cultural echoes. We really want to understand what we can glean and why these lost worlds, continue to fascinate us. You're looking for a clear understanding of these ancient puzzles without getting lost in endless speculation, and that's precisely our mission today.
It's fascinating, isn't it? When we talk about Atlantis, we're really starting with Plato. His dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, they're from way back around 360 BC, and that's basically the foundation, the bedrock, you could say, for almost everything that came after.
Right, the original source code,
Yeah,
almost. And it's interesting that even back then, people weren't totally sure what to make of it, were they? Some ancient writers just saw it as fiction, purely philosophical.
exactly. Aristotle, for instance, Plato's own student, he apparently thought Plato just made it up to illustrate points about politics or ethics, a teaching tool.
Okay. But not everyone agreed.
No, not at all. There were
Correct.
definitely folks who thought Atlantis was real history. The philosopher Crantor is often mentioned. He was a student of one of Plato's students. Now, his commentary on Timaeus is lost, but a much later writer, Proclus, this is like 5th century AD, Proclus claimed Crantor had heard about Egyptian hieroglyphs that actually backed up the Atlantis story.
Hieroglyphs. Really? Like actual proof.
Well, that was the report from Proclus. We have to be a bit careful, though. The details are fuzzy, and, it's not clear if Crantor ever claimed to have seen these himself or if it was secondhand info. So some ambiguity there.
Okay. So a debate right from the start. Fascinating. Fast forward to now.
Yeah.
What do the experts, the archaeologists, the historians think today?
Well, if you look at the broad academic consensus now, it leans very strongly towards Atlantis being Plato's invention. Specialists in archaeology, classical studies, they mostly agree it functions as a kind of utopia, or maybe more like a powerful metaphor in Plato's
A
arguments.
philosophical construct.
Pretty much. Dawson and Hayward wrote about this back in 2016, noting how the academic world has largely settled on that interpretation, not literal history.
Right. That makes academic sense. But then, why is it still such a big deal in popular culture? I mean, it's everywhere. You've got Aquaman, Bits and Marvel's Wakanda Forever, that Netflix show, Ancient Apocalypse, Disney's cartoon. It just won't go away.
That's a great question, isn't it? And it's especially interesting because Plato's actual description, it's really quite short, just, a few paragraphs here and there in the dialogues.
Really? That's it?
Yeah, but the imagery he used, incredibly vivid. Grand palaces, masses of gold and silver, even statues of dolphins. Those little details just sparked something, I think. Gave people a lot to imagine and build on.
Yeah, you can see the appeal, this amazing lost civilization vanished beneath the waves. But I've also heard that sometimes believing too strongly in a real Atlantis can get tied up with some pretty dodgy ideas.
Yes, that's an important and, frankly, sometimes uncomfortable side to it. Unfortunately, the idea has been co-opted at times. It's gotten tangled up with disinformation, pseudo-archaeology, conspiracy theories, and sometimes, sadly, even racist ideologies. There have even been cases of researchers who debunk these things facing abuse.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, it's crucial to say just being interested in Atlantis doesn't mean you hold those views at all. Of course not. But the idea of a lost, superior civilization can be attracted to certain extremist mindsets, unfortunately.
That's sobering. Okay, what about physical stuff? People sometimes point to things underwater, don't they? Like the Yonaguni Monument in Japan or
Oh.
Bimini Road.
All right, those sites definitely get brought up a lot. Yonaguni, Bimini.
Yeah.
They're fascinating underwater formations, no doubt. And they fuel speculation. But you really have to see them in the context of the myth's power, rather than thinking they're actual proof of Atlantis.
So geologists and archaeologists have other explanations.
Generally, yes. Mainstream science sees them as natural geological features,
Uh,
and we also know sea levels were much lower in the past, back in the early Holocene. So coastlines changed, land got submerged. That's a known process. Linking specific formations directly to Plato's Atlantis is, well, it's a leap not supported by evidence.
Gotcha. And Atlantis isn't the only lost land people talk about, is it? There are others like
Yeah.
Antillia, Avalon, Lemuria, Mu.
Exactly. It's part of a whole category of myths and legends, lost islands, sunken continents. It's a recurring theme across cultures. Atlantis often gets lumped in with Antillia, Avalon, Lemuria, Mu, even places from fiction, like Tolkien's Numenor. They all sort of scratch that same itch, that desire for hidden worlds and lost histories.
Speaking of submerged land, wasn't there something about Zealandia? The mostly underwater continent near New Zealand, is that connected?
Ah, Zealandia. Yes, that's a real thing, a genuine, mostly submerged continent. It has its own scientific mysteries, like why its crust is so thin, how exactly it's submerged. But while it shows that, yes, large land masses can sink over geological time due to tectonics and sea level changes, there's no actual link established between Zealandia and the Atlantis myth. It's more like a real-world example of the kind of geological processes that could submerge land.
Okay, different things. Now, someone who definitely had his own take was Edgar Cayce. His version of Atlantis sounds quite different.
Oh, very different. Edgar Cayce's readings offered a really specific spiritual interpretation. He talked about Atlantis having incredibly advanced technology, but also like unique spiritual creations, a time when sexes were separate,
Hmm.
and then a fall, a focus on materialism that led to its destruction and cataclysms.
So less history, more spiritual parable.
Precisely. It's important to understand Cayce's stuff comes from his psychic readings, his particular spiritual framework. It's not based on, archaeology or historical texts in the usual sense. It's one specific belief system within the wider Atlantis phenomenon.
And that idea of a cataclysm, a great flood destroying Atlantis, that seems to resonate with lots of other old stories, doesn't it? Flood myths are everywhere.
That's a really sharp observation. Yes, flood myths are incredibly widespread. You find them all over the globe. Ancient Mesopotamia, the Greek story of Deucalion and Pyrrha, the Bible's Noah's Ark story, of course, Indian myths with Manu and Matsya. Even indigenous cultures like the Cheyenne and Hopi have powerful flood narratives.
Why so common?
Well, it suggests a deep, maybe universal human experience or fear related to catastrophic natural events, the power of water, and maybe ideas about destruction and renewal.
Has science ever tried to explain where these myths might have come from, like actual events?
There have definitely been scientific hypotheses. Some researchers proposed a massive flooding event in the Black Sea area thousands of years ago, the Black Sea deluge hypothesis. Others look at possibilities like major tsunamis or even ancient cometary impacts causing widespread devastation that could be remembered in myths.
Any of those proven?
Well, the Black Sea idea has evidence supporting a significant water level rise, but the timing and exact nature are still debated. Impact theories are harder to pin down. And some older, more controversial ideas, like the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis being the main cause of global floods, that's been largely refuted by more recent research. So potential links, but no single smoking gun.
Okay, that covers a lot on Atlantis. Let's switch gears now to Mu, another lost continent, right? But this one's usually placed in the Pacific.
That's right. Mu is another one of these hypothetical lost continents, often located in the Pacific. Its story gets tangled up sometimes with Lemuria.
Lemuria, that was the one about lemurs, wasn't it?
Yeah, originally, Lemuria was a 19th century scientific hypothesis, now disproven, obviously to explain how lemurs ended up in Madagascar, Africa, and India, the supposed land bridge. But the idea of Mu as a lost civilization was really popularized by one guy, James Churchward. He started publishing books about it in the 1920s, beginning with Lost Continent of Mu, the Motherland of Man, in 1926.
And Churchward had a pretty wild story about how he found out about Mu, didn't he? Ancient tablets, secret languages.
He did indeed. According to Churchward, this all happened decades before he wrote the book. He claimed that when he was a soldier in India, he became friends with a temple priest. And this priest supposedly showed him some ancient clay tablets written in a lost language called Nagamaya, which only a couple of people can read.
Nagamaya.
That's what he called it. He claimed he persuaded the priest to teach him the language and translate these tablets, and they supposedly told the story of Nu, the original homeland of humanity. Later on, he also claimed another source, about 2,500 stone tablets found in Mexico by a guy named William Niven.
Okay, so Atlantis starts with Plato, a philosopher, writing dialogues and that be allegories. Mu starts with Churchward claiming access to secret physical artifacts. That's quite a difference.
A huge difference. It really highlights the contrast. Atlantis originates in philosophical literature, open to interpretation. Mu is presented right from the start as a supposedly factual historical account based on hidden, esoteric evidence.
Evidence nobody else has seen, presumably.
Well, the Niven tablets existed, but their interpretation as records of Nu is entirely Churchward's controversial claim. The Indian tablets remain elusive, to say the least.
And Mu, like Atlantis, gets grouped with other lost lands.
Oh, yes. It definitely falls into that same category in the popular imagination. Lost continents, hidden wisdom. It all taps into similar themes.
It's amazing how these ideas persist. I actually saw people on Reddit talking about Mu in relation to a video game, Honkai Impact 3rd, linking it straight back to Churchward's theory.
See, It shows how these concepts, even ones based on, let's say, highly questionable foundations, can embed themselves in culture and find new life generations later, even in gaming.
So when you pull it all together, Atlantis, Mu, all these stories, what is it about lost civilizations that grabs us so powerfully?
I think it's a mix of things. There's definitely the romance of it, the allure of these incredibly advanced societies from long ago, maybe societies better than ours in some way. Then there's the drama of the catastrophe, the total destruction. That's a powerful narrative archetype.
And maybe the hope of discovery, finding proof.
Exactly. The potential for uncovering some profound secret history, something that rewrites what we thought we knew.
Mm.
It speaks to that desire for mystery, for something more beyond the everyday. Perhaps it also connects to a kind of collective anxiety about our own civilization's fragility, especially when we see geological evidence of massive past changes on Earth.
So it comes back to that myth versus reality question.
Okay.
We have Plato's Atlantis, maybe an allegory. We have Churchward's Mu, based on, let's call them unconventional sources.
And the bottom line, from the perspective of mainstream science, archaeology, geology, is that while yes, land can get submerged, and yes, catastrophic floods have happened, there's just no credible, verifiable evidence for Atlantis or Mu existing as these legendary advanced civilizations.
So the stories aren't literally true history.
Not based on what we can currently know, but that doesn't mean they aren't significant. Culturally, psychologically, they clearly mean a lot to us. They reflect that deep human drive to explore, to question, to imagine what might lie hidden.
So maybe the value isn't in finding the physical place, but in understanding why we keep searching, why these stories endure.
I think that's a big part of it. They tell us something about ourselves, about our fascination with the unknown, our relationship with the past, and our desire for wonder.
Maybe the real secret of Area 51 isn't what's inside, but why we were never meant to know. Until then, stay curious.